Hey, B-Siders. Welcome to another episode of Bravo for the B-Side. This is Jim,
And this is Danny.
and we have a treat for you. I always say that, but it's in the title what we're doing. We have what's going to be a great interview. I know it. We have the writer-director of Yes, Repeat, No, which you would have listened to by the time this comes out, and we're very excited. So I would like to welcome Michael, and please forgive me. We always butcher names. Is it Dahan or
Yeah, you got it.
Dahan? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Michael Dahan, a writer director, and very graciously giving us his time. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. Super excited to talk to you guys about this film.
And we're excited to talk about it. Let's get to it. I mean, the obvious question is what brought this movie out of you? What propelled you to make this particular film?
Yeah, that's a big question. Well, I'm Israeli first and foremost, right? I was born in Jerusalem. I moved to the United States when I was 7.5, something like that. So personally and biographically, obviously, there's an attachment there. I've lived in the United States, since I was 7 or 8, and I've gone
Right.
back. I've got a lot of family. I've got a huge extended family, and I was actually in the process of. I was in graduate school. I was working on a PhD, and I spent almost 10 years. Trying to figure out how to, as an artist, because I'm a fine artist first, I would say, but also, I was film executive before that. But whatever, I'm all those things together. But I was trying to figure out a way to make work about this experience of mine, and also felt that I almost had no right to say anything unless I really spent some time understanding things, even though I had lived there. I was born there. My grandfather is a rabbi. I was bar mitzvahed at the Western Wall. So it's part of my biography, and I'm emotionally attached, right, to this place, but also very concerned and
Yeah.
conflicted about a lot of the things that all of us see happening, right? So I just wanted to figure out how to deal with that. But I also felt
Right.
like most people, like I didn't have a right to really say anything unless I really understood what I was talking about. So this is what I was in, in a PhD program working on, trying to figure out how to understand what to say, how to make something, what right, what can you possibly say
Okay.
about this situation that everybody is simultaneously very aware of, but also hesitant to say something that might trigger somebody else, right? So I was doing this at the time as a graduate student, and thinking about curating an exhibition that I was going to write about of Israeli and Palestinian artists who were making work about what it means to grow up with intergenerational trauma, right? Whether that intergenerational trauma has to do with something that happened
Okay.
many generations ago to your grandparents, whether it's the Holocaust, or a few generations ago, let's say, if you're Palestinian, with the kind of arrival of large numbers of European Jews and being displaced by them, right? For Palestinians, that's known as a kind of catastrophe. It's called the Nakba, right?
Mm-hmm.
So both groups that'll become sides in the world of politics, but both groups there are artists who make work about this. What does it mean two, 3 generations down the line, where when you've either repressed the trauma, like you don't want to talk about it. Those are things we don't talk about in this family. That happens all the time in Jewish households, right? Or if you've distorted
Sure.
it because
yeah.
you haven't dealt with it, or you didn't talk about it, or your parents didn't talk about it, so you don't really understand, but it still comes out in these weird mythological ways. And the artwork that was coming out of these artists, I thought was fascinating. So I thought, oh, great. And I got a fantastic cross-section of artists, museum level artists. But the one problem, and this was kind of at the beginning of COVID, the one problem we couldn't crack was that they didn't want to be in a gallery together, right? for obvious reasons. Let's say Israelis,
Okay.
Palestinians didn't want to be tokenized as like, oh, the Palestinian in the Israeli show, like the person that will work with the other side, right? So that's never not been an issue. And then Israelis who felt a certain amount of hesitation about, what it might mean for them to be in a show with Palestinians. So we could never agree to actually how we would stage the exhibition. The gallery director that had given me this space
Okay.
for a month. This is like March of 2021. Was like, listen, dude, I don't care. You got to fill up the gallery in October. Like, it's not my problem. Like, you got to do something. And she said, she's also one of my, PhD committee advisors. And she said, I don't care what you do, just put something in the gallery. You're a filmmaker. Why don't you make something? Now, if you make films and it's late March, early April, and somebody says, make a film by October, you're just kind of like, what? Right. So that was the beginning. And so I was like, I
Mhm.
don't think that's possible. But I went away and I thought about it. I talked to some people, and I spoke to somebody who said to me, listen, this is a very treacherous thing to try to negotiate between these two fraught positions. And there's another person who tried to do this, and his name was
Yeah.
Giuliano Americamis, and he died for it. Now, I had heard the name. There were people that I'd worked with who had worked with the Freedom Theater, which is the company that Giuliano Americamis, who's the subject of this film, started as a kind of activist project. But I didn't really dive into it until this, another professor at Berkeley had said, why don't you, this is what he did, and see, look at what happened to him. All I had to do was do a very basic, I'd known about his work, but then I found this video that we use in the film where he kind of tongue-in-cheek predicts how he's going to die, right? And he says, I tell you how I'm going to die. Some effed up
Right.
Palestinian is
Yeah.
going to, walk up to me and shoot me in the head. And then I saw and I read, a bunch of news stories about how that actually happened at some point a few years later. We don't know that it was a Palestinian. It's inconclusive. And that's almost the most interesting part of this, is that there were individuals on all sides that had reason to resent him, be suspicious of him. Palestinians thought he was a spy for the Israelis. Israelis thought he was collaborating with Palestinians, who many of them only considered as terrorists. Right? I'm going to put that word in quotes because, of course, that's a thing that we use to
Right.
classify somebody. It may not always be accurate. It may sometimes be accurate. Who knows? So there were a lot of people who had reasons. Giuliano's theater company in Jenin, right? In a kind of Muslim community that's quite conservative. Giuliano was staging plays with boys and girls, teenagers on stage. Sometimes cross-dressing, because of course cross-dressing is part of theater history. Right, it's part of theater, but in a
That's
very
part of theater, yeah.
conservative, Muslim society, that's something that is problematic. Boys and girls on stage kissing each other, teenagers, right? For Giuliano, this was about like, how do you deal with trauma,
Sure.
and create some kind of form of cultural resistance that's nonviolent. So he's trying to show them another way. So there were a lot of reasons. There were a lot of old Jews and old Muslims who had many reasons to, be resentful and suspicious. And so that, to me, as soon as I saw that video and I read that part of the story, I thought, well, I'm no dummy. There's a movie somewhere in this, right? There's got to be something. Like, you just see those two things and you're like, okay, there's got to be something to make
Yeah.
it. And so I just kind of went into, like a good, proper graduate student, into a research hole for a couple of weeks, and kind of the idea hit me, and I was like, oh, that's it. I have to make it. And for the filmmakers in the audience, and for you two, when something hits you that you have to make, it's not always joyful. Sometimes it's like you stepped on a piece of poop and you're like, oh man, I gotta make this. Like, this is gonna be torture, but I gotta do it. Right. And that's kind of what it was like. And I remember telling my wife,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm gonna make a film, and I'm gonna be insufferable for a good couple of years because I can't not make it. That's how and that's what it was, really. It was like, I can't not make it. When I
Right.
was inspired by this idea that we could take this human being who's so complex and maybe create parts of him, and each of those parts would be a character. And all of a sudden, these characters are arguing about which one is the most authentic part of him. Is he more Israeli or more Palestinian? I was like, okay, that's it. That's a movie. I got it. I got it. I got to write it. You know, it was like, I got to sit down and write. I got to sit down and write. So that's kind of how it started. I don't feel like I had a choice. Once it came to me, I was like, I have to do this. And I'm not prolific, right? It takes a lot for me to commit to something. So it was like, okay, I had to do it. So that's how it started. And then I just kind
Okay.
of went into this fever, and we started pre-production while I was still writing the script, because it was like I had the idea, and then I had, started conversations with the first conversation I started was with the sound designer. Strangely, it was a friend of mine, and I was like, I don't know what it is, but I know there's a lot of clicking, footsteps and metronomes and this and that. So it's like that's
Right.
actually how it started before even I think there was even much of a script, right? I was just like, I hear this thing and they're moving. So it just kind of started coming together, and it had to come together very quickly because we still had to show something in October.
Okay.
Just the first act. I
What were
mean,
you
really,
able to show in
it was,
October? Did you
and
have?
we can
Okay.
talk
Okay.
about the kind of details of production and how much, but we walked out of production with 250 hours of footage, right? That we then had to sift through. So all we
Wow.
had the
Okay.
capacity to do between me and Alex Tyson and Benjamin Shern, brilliant editors that I worked with, was like, okay, I think the first kind of camp that we have to find on the mountain is Act One, and I knew that Act One was very clearly they're just auditioning, and we just have a lot of takes we got to get through, and again
Okay.
that was a 40-minute version for the gallery that then became the 26 minutes of the first act or whatever it ended up being. And then after that it became this process of, okay, we have to now find a feature, right, which is a whole different thing. That was another, I would say, 2 years of,
Right.
so it was
Out
it
of
was
it.
an exhaustive process. But we, so the gallery show was kind of an installation. So the first 40 minutes or 38 minutes of the three men auditioning, a little more than you get to see in the feature, with an installation of the set itself. So the audience was kind of sitting in that round while watching, and there were photographs and prints and lenticular
Okay.
Okay.
fine art prints, which I don't know if you know what lenticular images are, right? So yeah, so when you would move it, you would get
Oh
Palestinian
yeah, where you move
Giuliano. When
it
you
and it
move it,
shows a
then
different
move it
image.
again, it would be Israeli Giuliano, right? So as you're walking across the gallery, you would start to see the different sides of him. And that was it. There was one room of those and one room of the installation, and then from that point on, it was like, okay, now we gotta make a feature. Like we gotta cut the feature. We didn't shoot anything else because God knows we had a lot,
Okay.
right?
Well, I just want to jump back too, because I had just talked about this in our retrospective.
Okay.
That you knew you had to do it. It just landed. And for so every at the end of every year we do a retrospective. Usually it's somebody who's
Made an impact on filmmaking.
yeah, at some point. But we did a kind of a genre thing this year. But at the end of it, I had an epiphany. I had surgery in the beginning of December, and I had a lot
Right.
of
Right. I've
downtime
had
to just
those.
sit and think because I wasn't allowed to
It's
do
torture.
much of anything. And I know. But it hit me while I was sitting there that I view uh, the creative nature. Uh, People
Mhm.
have always asked, like, I'm full of doubt. I have imposter syndrome. I don't even know if I should be doing this
Of
because it's
course,
so,
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Why should
not
anyone
getting.
listen to me?
Yeah,
Like,
but it kind of came down to if you are somebody who feels that creative nature inside and you sit down, and it doesn't have to be writing, it doesn't have to be directing, it can be painting, it can be any kind of creativity at all,
Totally.
that it's like music. It's a very emotional thing. When we hear a piece of music, we don't go over and over and over and over and analyze
Right.
it for days and then
For
decide,
sure.
yeah, I like it. It's like, especially for me, it's like, bam, I'll hear something on a show or something. I got to find out what that music is because I love that. Um, when you're sitting down doing something or you have an idea, if that's all you can think about and that is all that is your head
Totally.
is in that space, you're in the right place. You're in the right place to be a creative, to make something, some sort of art or whatever it is. And if you sit down, like for writing, we're writers. If you write for an hour and
Right.
then you're like, oh, finally that hour's
Well,
up.
I don't know. I mean, it depends what your relationship to writing is. My relationship is it's insufferable, and I'm really glad when it's over. But I'm always glad that I've done it, right? And I like I like rewriting, right? But the
Sure.
first
Right.
pass at it is always it's difficult. But I haven't professionalized it. Like I wait for the inspiration to come. I don't get paid. Nobody's paying me to write or make movies. And the people who I know who are professionals, I mean, they do it every day, whether they want to or not. Right.
Right. And I talked about that. I mean, you can have a whole career as an artist
Sure.
of some form doing, I guess you can call it the commercial side. It's I'm doing the job, and that's fine. I just like to let people know that, even it is, as when we think of an idea for a script,
Right.
we're like, oh, here goes the
Totally.
process. Because it is
Yeah.
painful
I'm
to
there.
pound it
I mean,
out
I'm in that
just
right
to get
now.
the story, the beats.
But you have to.
Yeah, but I would
Yeah.
I would not want to be doing anything else in that moment. I feel like I'm me. I feel like I'm home. We feel like we're us. And yeah, I love that feeling, because then watching
Right.
movies,
Yeah.
and we watch a lot of
For
movies.
sure.
Not everything resonates. We love horror films. They're fun, but yes, repeat, no. Just as you were talking
Yeah.
about making the film, I was feeling it in here, kind of like, just like watching the show. I felt
Right.
like I was there.
Yeah, I like
We
that.
referred to it as like a fifth wall break, where we're there watching these people do this thing, and it wasn't like trickery, and it wasn't any kind of
Because you were there. I
gitchy
mean, that's the thing
maneuver
is that, these
to,
actors came
POV.
in not
Yes.
as just actors. I mean, they're all actors and quite brilliant, but they all had personal biographical connections to this region. Kareem, who plays the Israeli Giuliano, is himself Lebanese, so he's got a
Yeah.
lot of experience understanding how Palestinians and the PLO going into Lebanon, how that affected his life. I mean, it affected his life. Musa is Palestinian, Adam is Israeli, and didn't necessarily agree as a human being with all the things that we wanted to say, but like a good Israeli, he was up for the argument. He was like, okay, I'm ready. He was there to represent a position, and Salome is British Iranian, so everybody had an opinion. And when we arrived kind of
Right.
into the process of how we were going to do this, a big part of it for me was like, don't come in off book. I want to see you holding a script, and I actually want you to use it, because I want to see that you're figuring out what the part is. And therefore, the kind of problem to solve as a director, as a filmmaker, was, how do we create the conditions so that we can play and experiment and kind of feel safe and get it all, right? How do we get it all, right? Because we had 10 shooting days, 8 hours a day, maybe 1 or 2 days of overtime. Couldn't really afford overtime. We're paying people SAG minimum. We're 2 hours in the chair, hair and makeup and wardrobe, and 6 hours on stage. And those 6 hours on stage, the first week we kind of called it rehearsal. Like, okay, we're going to work through the script. We're going to figure out how to walk on a rotating stage. We're going to do the script in sections, almost like a play, like 20-page sections for an 85-ish page script.
Mm-hmm.
That was a script. I sat down, and I mean, again, when it came out after not just 6 months of trying to figure out this show, but really 8 years of doing this research and a lifetime of thinking about this, the script from start to finish, the first draft probably took me 36 hours. I mean, I went to sleep, I showered, I ate, I got back, I kept going, because it was like, okay, I have to write, it's coming out, and I can't, and nobody talk to me, don't bother Dad, he's in his office, right? So we had to figure out, okay, how do you create a situation where we can do this thing that isn't quite film because I'm, I teach film. I love film. I've worked in film. This whole thing of like, okay, we have a shot and you're going to say the line and then we're going to pan and then we're going to stop and then we're going to reset the lights and then we're going to do them walking in over the shoulder and then you're going to say your one line. I was just like, oh God, I don't want to work like that, right? How do we get people like in the flow? And part of it was like, okay, how about if we have cameras everywhere, right? Okay, so 3 cameras on dolly tracks running constantly, or maybe even 4 sometimes. One time we had a jib for the day, whatever, and a BTS crew filming me, talking to them, and just shoot the whole time. And if I say cut, and I said, listen, if we stop and start arguing about the script, that's the movie too. So I might say cut to the actors, but we're not cutting. You guys don't cut.
Right.
Like, we're going to stagger the cameras so the card never runs out at the same time, so that we're always covered. Right. It was like, so one of the things that was really kind of liberating about this was like, listen, if somebody melts down on set one day and runs away into the dressing room for the actors, like, that's what happened for that day. That's in the movie. You know what I mean? Like, whatever happens in those 6 hours is what the movie becomes. So there was a script, and the script got rewritten, and Sarah Salovitz, my producer, had some brilliant ideas in the beginning that was like, okay, let's put some quotes up so that they can start to kind of integrate things into the script from these quotes of famous politicians and historical figures. So it's almost like a living document that starts to, they're improvising, and we're doing multiple sections. We're doing sections in like 25-minute takes. And sometimes we stop in the middle of the take and we just like, let's take it back a couple pages and just keep going. And we're just shooting the whole time, right? So there's something about it that's very loose and kind of messy. And it was like, okay, well, if we have a bunch of cameras shooting all the time, what are we going to do about the fact that there's cameras in every frame? It's like, okay, how do you make that part of the movie? Right. And so you start to kind of make these kind of meta cinematic choices where like, we're just going to own up to it. And then we're going to make it part of the plot. So it was like, how do you get as much active engagement with the material as you can and as little technical slowdown as possible? Like, you create a lighting grid that you never have to really move. You can kind of bring things up and down, but you don't have to set and reset.
Right.
You put cameras on dolly tracks and have them kind of moving so that you're covering, I think while I was in pre-production, I watched, there was a BBC production of No Exit, which Harold Pinter starred in, right? And it was made for it's called Directed for TV. And they directed, it was a live play, but they filmed it and they got all of the coverage live. So they'd like close-ups of hand, and I was like, "Oh, that's how you do it. You just get all your coverage.
Nice.
It's almost like you're running a play, but you have You have really good camera operators that are getting your close-ups, and like they didn't know who was going to be important when. They just were really good at it, and the actors didn't know. It wasn't like we had a blocking map where I was like, okay, when you say that line, it was just like, okay, there was nothing. Yeah, there was none of that. It was like I said,
look this way.
If 2 people are standing up, sit down. and if 2 people are sitting down, stand up, and if you're in a straight line, somebody move out so you're in a triangle. Like it was almost like it was almost like basketball. It was like, it's a live thing and you always have to keep the triangle so that it can be dynamic for the camera people. And those were the only requirements. Other than that, let's just figure out how it's going to go. And of course the stage is rotating, and that's also an element that they have to deal with. So there's just a lot of moving parts that you were just on the verge of falling apart at all times, but like we just held it together just enough that it's like we got it and it didn't completely lose people. I mean, because it really is a test of attention and kind of narrative. How loose can you get before you just start losing things?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that would have been. So you said you guys shot for 8 days.
A weekend in between.
10 days. So
Okay.
it was essentially all of you having a discussion, right, over
And
the
filming
course
it.
of 2
And filming
weeks.
There are
That
directors
sounds
like
incredibly intense.
Mike Lee,
Yeah.
who's a British director I'm a huge fan of, who works in a similar way. He'll write a script, or he'll write kind of skeletons of a script, and then he'll go into rehearsal and do really intense rehearsal and every night we'll kind of revise the script and add stuff that people say, and use the improvisation as and kind of script from their work. And I'm very fond of that kind of process, because it's based on the people that you have and what they bring to it. And I thought this character was a hothead, but he's not a hothead because this actor isn't playing it like that. So I think there was something about the kind of, and I'm a control freak because directors are generally control freaks. So it was a kind of a version of having to let it all go and just create a situation where things happen and you film them. And that's what you get, is the result of what happened in those 10 days. So that's why I think the film feels like that, because even though there was a script, it's not like, there was never a conversation where like, no, you have to do it this way. It's got to be this way. It's very rare. I mean, you see us having conversations like with Adam asking me like, well, what is it? Is it like this or is it like that? And I'd be like, well, you have to say it as though, she's never heard you say it before, whatever that is, like, because we're figuring it out. So I think it's that part of it that makes it feel like that's actually what's happening, because that's actually what was happening.
There's a couple of good points here. Number one, the diversity of the actors. And I think that's one of the things about the movie that was, for me, most poignant, is knowing that the characters are these very specific individuals, and they're playing one man. And I love the constant reminding of that, this isn't a part.
Right. And they're like, what does that mean?
It's a piece of this person. It's a side of this one man. And then having them switch, and I like that for two reasons. One, because I liked how it represented as an actor. I mean, if you really want to, do your thing and get paid and make movies, you kind of have to shelve your personal self. You got to play the part, and if you're committing to it,
undercover.
you got to, dive into it, and you might have some strong feelings.
Yeah,
it is. But I loved how that was addressed and handled in the film for the characters. And I like the idea that the actors themselves had some pillars to stand on, but doing their job professionally. I think this is I don't want to say you're lucky, but I think you had like some of the most wonderful components fall into place, because everything in the film, like I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall and seen all this raw, not through a lens, just watch it happen. And I think it would have very much been the same kind of feeling that we get watching it. There's just an authenticity to all of this that is, especially like I said, when they change the parts, at the end, that monologue is powerful.
Yeah. I mean, one version of this before this was even a thing was like, oh, I'm going to have this on two different walls, and you're going to have to walk around from one wall, and one wall will be the performance of it, and the other wall would be the rehearsal of it, right? So that you wouldn't know, like you'd see the conversations, but then you'd see the performance on the other side. This was the kind of gallery idea in the beginning. So that part of it, where like you don't really know which one is which and what are you actually watching, just started happening organically, because I was like, are we rehearsing the performance or are we performing the rehearsal? Which part, what are we doing right now? Right? Like we didn't even like, is this for week one is rehearsal and week two is performance, but it's all starting to feel like so that blurring, like the blurring between the characters, switching the suits, like that kind of becomes not only the point of the content of the film, but the process itself. When Kareem, who's Lebanese, but playing the Israeli, turns to Adam, who's Israeli, but playing, the public Giuliano, in the kind of color footage, which is just supposed to denote this is the breaking of the, this is the BTS, this is behind the scenes.
Yes.
When he asks him, like, what do you think of the accent? Is it too much? Like, is it a caricature? That's a real question that Kareem, the actor, is asking Adam, the actor, who's Israeli. And Adam is like, maybe 10% less, like catching that stuff.
Well, and that brings up the second point. So you mentioned, as a director, and everyone we've ever talked to who's directed, you got to be a control freak, because otherwise the whole thing is going to come apart. It's not going to move forward. There's too many moving parts, too many things, and someone has to,
and
be the bad guy and wrangle the kittens
like really tiny
into
problems.
their basket.
And huge one.
Yeah.
all the time. But when it comes to actors, I, not having directed anything, we've started and stopped making a
Of
short film
course.
that we've been passionate about getting to, but life has just like, nah, not today. But one of the things I've always felt is, and this just comes from like how I do my normal day job. If I'm in charge of people, especially if I come into a new place, my stance is, look, I
Right.
wasn't here, but you were hired, so I'm going to trust that you know your job. So I want you to do your job. That's really all I'm going to ask of you. And I'm not going to get on you and micromanage. But when it comes to actors, I think some of the most successful things, either scenes or whole films that we've seen, are folks who, I mean, the actor is an actor. They're not an
Right.
AI. They're not being programmed to just read from the page. Um, I've always believed the approach of, okay, so this is what's on the paper. Please read what's on the paper, but let's do that.
Right.
And then let's do it
Yeah.
again, but let's do it with where you feel to go, and having that trust. As a director, is it for you, is it difficult to let go of that control for that moment and let whatever's going to blossom, or it might fall flat on its face, you know?
It does. I mean, it's difficult because you think you have a version in your head. I'd say when I was younger and I was directing a lot of theater, you know, it was a lot about controlling and precision, and it's like you can't tell somebody how to do it because they have to find it. In a way, you have to ask them the questions that will lead them to the answers that you hope they know are there, that you want them to see. Right. So it's a very psychological game. But in this situation, it was completely about letting go of that control. My wife was 8 months pregnant when I was in production. There was a lot of things going on. She's like, I can't believe you're making a movie while I'm about to give a baby, to have a baby. So there was a lot of stuff going on, and it was impossible to have that level of control. Try as I may, because of course I did as much as I could. But once I got there, there was something kind of liberating about the fact that I was like, hey, whatever happens is the movie. Like I can't manifest it and by telling people what to do because these are really bright human beings who have really deep thoughts about this stuff, and they're pushing back constantly. And there's nothing lost in just being like, well, let's try it. Like, I don't know. And there are things that I never would have been able to find in this script had these brilliant performers not proposed them. Kareem. Uh, there are moments when people would say to me things like, "Well, I think you're just being a little too. You're kind of tipping your hand a little bit. You're being a little too critical of Israel. Like, how do we find that part of it that's the part that you love? Because obviously that's there,
Mm-hmm.
right?" I'm all of those things. I mean, I live in a reality where, regardless of how much you understand, I'm living in contradiction all the time, right? I believe, Israel should exist. I have a strong emotional attachment to it. I believe Palestinians deserve a state of their own. I also I hate people being taken hostage and tortured and all the things that have happened. But I also think the displacement and killing of Palestinians on numbers that we haven't seen in a very long time. If you might think it's 30, 50, 70, whatever it is, none of those things are acceptable to me. And they might be in contradiction with each other politically, but like that's the lived experience of being a human being. It's full of
Yes.
contradictions. So I don't accept this nonsense about, well, if you have this and you can't believe that, those people can, fuck off as far as they're not living in a real world. Because in the real world, life is contradiction and you're constantly confronted with it. And so the question is like, that's what this movie is supposed to be about, is the messiness of that contradiction. And there were times when my actors would be like, yeah, it's not, you're kind of, you're tipping your hand because it's too clearly being critical of Israel in this particular moment. And like, how do we bring it back to this, the thing in the beginning with, what he dreams about what Israel could be,
Yeah.
The Zionists, the kind of the original Zionist vision. Zionism has become a really terrible word, but the original Zionist vision was really about this kind of idealism that comes out of, the kind of idealism of communism, the Russian Revolution, and, the kind of ideas around how people would exist in these communes. So we were trying to find all of these things, even though they were in contradiction with other things, right? Because it's the contradiction that I think most people don't understand on a really emotional level. And so, the only way to do that, I think, was to let go of control, because control is never about contradiction so much as it's about like precision. Uh-huh. And this was like, how do you set up the conditions for contradiction to happen so that you can feel like, oh my God, we're watching something happening.
Yeah.
It's a happening that's being recorded, as opposed to like a script somebody wrote and these kind of wrote, especially if you do theater and you do it multiple, you have like multiple night runs. If you do it the same way every time, even if it was perfect the first time, it's not going to get the same. It's not going to get the same reaction.
No, it becomes commercial again. It's bing, 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 and there's no growth.
Exactly. So how does it live and breathe? And I think for cinema, you often don't have that responsibility, because it's like you've got the one good take where everything happens. But I think we were trying to just how do we create an environment?
I like that. And actually what came to mind is the movie MASH.
Stressed about it.
That there was a script, but they gave up on it on day one. 90% of that whole movie is just roll, and letting Donald Sutherland and Elliot Gould and everybody just kind of base their conversation on the script. But they're same thing as you. We're going to roll, and we're going to catch what happens. And in the end, we're going to make a movie out of it.
Right.
And
the editing process becomes, I would imagine, a real challenge.
Let's talk about that.
Right.
What was that for you? So for me, watching it, like I think I had mentioned in the episode, the lighting, the camera work, the angles, there wasn't a bad angle to the actors. There was not, the camera wasn't in the wrong space. There wasn't a sacrifice of shot versus lighting. Everything was just this orchestra of like cinematic perfection.
Yeah, that's BJ Strongman. I mean, that's our director of photography or cinematographer. I mean, that's, he and I had conversations initially, and I met him through my producer Braxton Pope, who was very essential. Braxton makes movies for a living. He makes interesting, weird, quirky movies. He's done it for 20 years. I don't even know how he survives doing it, because it's so complicated and difficult to make interesting movies.
Yeah, we like interesting, weird, quirky movies. Right. Send over. We'll have to look it up.
Like, he's working. He's worked. He's currently working with Paul Schrader on he's worked with Paul Schrader on a bunch of movies. He's made some really interesting films. But he kind of set me up. He's a curator of human beings. He's just like, this is a really interesting DP you should work with. This is a really interesting title designer, Tom Can, who did the titles for Enter the Void, which are kind of legendary in the kind of title world. Like, just really like curating people. And BJ and I had this conversation where I said, here's what I want. How do we get there? And it was like, okay, create a lighting grid that you never have to change. You can make adjustments to, put cameras on dolly tracks. And again, the line producers were like, well, we were going to get maybe 10 feet of straight track. And I was like, no, guys, it's a circular stage, and I want circular track, right? And I want it around the entirety of the stage. Those were the kind of things that I was like, no, I know I want this, and you can't talk me out of it. But BJ, I think, is responsible for how do you make sure that people are lit properly anywhere they go on this 20-foot turntable, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you do that? I wouldn't have known how to do that, but I think it worked out brilliantly.
So the editing piece, you have all this footage, 250 hours, and that's just astounding. And I mean, I guess what was it? Was it like a grind? Was it?
It was a grind.
Yeah.
Okay,
because the beginning was a grind. Because again, like, how do you even know what you have? I mean, the only person who knew whether something was good or not was me, because I kind of knew what I was looking for. So I became the assistant editor for my editor, because I did all the logging and I logged the footage and categorized it. And because I understood that, like, that time that Kareem did that sigh after he, whatever, like, that was perfect. And I remember thinking on set, like, oh my God, that's perfect. So when I saw it again, I was like, yes. So I was the one who was doing that with another AE for a while, and then it was just me. And it took us months to categorize we had a paper edit of the script, and we would just be like, okay, which takes do we have this page on, and it'd be like, okay, we have take 5C on day 3, we have take this take. So then we just at least could be able to see it.
Right.
That took us months just to get to that, where we had this binder where it was like,
just to get it organized.
Is it good? Yeah, is it good? and what is, like, how far does it go? Oh, it breaks, because then we go back in. And so just that. And once we had the binder, the next step after that was like, okay, well, let's edit the script as it was written, beginning to end. And you do that. And I was like, well, that's not it. Like, that's terrible. That's not it at all. And I would tell you that the film that you see as the kind of end result is exactly the film I wanted to make. Ben
perfect.
took it. It was the end. He finished it. Alex did the first kind of gallery thing, and then Ben took over, and then that was another couple of years, and it was like, it's exactly what I wanted it to be, but it's not at all what I wrote.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because once it was there and it was cut, an assembly of the first assembly was like 2 hours and 40 minutes, something really, it was just the script as written with the right takes in the right places. It was just like, that's not it. Okay, let's start cutting it up. Let's start moving things around and kind of going nonlinear.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting to kind of compress it and cut it out. And the really hard part towards the end of the process was like, how do you get it down from 2 hours and 30 minutes? Nobody wants to see a 2.5 hour talkie film. This is already feeling like a long film because it's so dense. It's a real, it's a heavy meal. It's not like an ice pop or like a Chick-fil-A sandwich. It's like a 5-course meal. It's like you need to be ready for it. So we wanted to get it as tight as possible. I still want it to be, maybe it's 98 minutes. I would love for it to be 85 minutes, but could never find it. But towards the end, when we were at like 112 minutes, I would be like, okay, Ben, here's what you're going to do. You're going to cut something out, and you're not going to tell me. And if I don't notice it, then it stays. And I'm like, so get rid of it. He's like, get rid of it, get rid of it. I'm like, no, just put it in a pile, because I'm going to want to know what you got rid of. Like, the exercise is that I'm just going to quarantine myself for a bit. So he would just take things out, because if we talked about it first, I would argue every single syllable.
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't want to.
That's the whole movie. You can't cut that.
Kill
syllable.
your darlings.
Totally. So we got there, and then it was about, like, we did a cut where he just took out all the space between people's lines and breaths, and it was just cutting just speed it up a little bit. So it just got to this point where finally there was nothing left to do. And there were times where we would take a week or two away from it and be like, I don't even want to talk about this film. I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Let's revisit, that part, it was a grind. There was a grind part. And then there was, we found the film and we have purpose again part. And then it was a grind to cut it down part. You know? Because that was, that took a lot. Getting it to 98 minutes took a lot. And, there were some people on our team of producers who were like, you got to cut it down more. This is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It feels like a lot to me.
Okay.
When I watch it, I love the film, but I still want to find 13 minutes. So just chuck it out.
13 minutes out.
I guess, I mean, we're like one-offs, Danny and I. We love this kind of film. It is very dialogue driven. And as we wrote a short script that is basically, it would be 2 people on screen. So it's really not what the script is about. It's finding the 2 people to lock the audience in for,
right.
That 15, 20 minutes or whatever for a very short film. But then there has to be dialogue. And I did compare to like Glengarry Glen Ross, because that's one of my favorite films where
Mamet is the best of the dialogue.
Yeah, it's there just isn't a lot actually going on in the movie. The plot is not really gripping, but it's something to put all these people to circle around and keep a little consistency. But I love just the boom, ba boom, ba boom. We even had our daughter watch it. I'm like, I want you to understand the power of dialogue, the power of speech, and how it goes and how it goes and how it goes. So, so this, I don't know that it could stretch out, but I think what saved, Glengarry Glen Ross is it's all relevant to the film and it all keeps it moving. In this,
about
a third of the way through, I just wanted to hear whatever anyone had to say.
Well,
at
that
this
was it.
point.
That
was
was,
like,
I think, the most difficult part of us watching the film is we watched it and took notes, as we do.
Right. I don't even understand how you would go about doing that with
it
this.
was so
It
difficult.
was very difficult.
Yeah.
Because usually we do beat by beat. Now we're in the thing and this, and he's picking this
Sure.
up and stuff.
Yeah, like what are the beats?
Yeah.
And we go through like the whole thing. So it's obviously spoilers. And then we talk about what worked, what didn't, or we pause and we'll be like, so yeah, when they did this and the effects were great, or this was a good line, or depending what kind of
Yeah.
film it was.
Yeah.
But this was very different. I knew right away this is going to be a hard thing to. I even put in my notes. I'm done. I'm doing it my way,
Right.
not our usual way. And but that was just it. And I had to pull myself away from the movie to make sure I was putting some stuff down on what I liked about
Right.
this. I want to mention this. I want to mention that because I just was mesmerized at the screen because all four, the three actors and the directors, but all four actors there just had me by the collar,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize it till, like I said, about a third of the way in. I'm like, they could start reciting, kids' fairy tales or poems or, Itsy Bitsy Spider, and I'm not moving. I'm going to watch it.
Well, because something is happening between them.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Like something is actually happening that you're witnessing, and that's one of my directing teachers in college used to always like you'd put something up, and he'd be like, "What's happening, Bobby? Like, what's happening? Is something happening here? Am I watching something, or is it just people like genuflecting, acting things, right?" And that's what I think. There were times where we didn't know, like, are they really fighting, or should we stop? Like, is this like Sarah
sure.
and Braxton and I would look at each other and be like, is this real, or is this them acting? Kareem and Musa have a kind of long history together. They met as young actors working on Steven Spielberg's Munich. So they were They were they were members of Black September, right? So they started out as like their kind of careers, their early careers playing, terrorists, and kind of both decided like I don't want to be typecast in this, and I don't want these kind of parts, right? So there was a certain amount of hesitation even in this about doing this kind of material, but they understood that this wasn't the kind of stereotype, because we do deal with a lot of stereotype. I mean, Giuliano was an actor in the 80s. He's a Middle Eastern man. The kind of parts that are even available to an actor, a Middle Eastern actor in the 1980s and 90s, very limited, right? There's only so many things you can play. And you could see it in the parts, those parts, the first act, which is him auditioning, those are taken directly from films that Giuliano was in. Yeah. Right. Some of that stuff is just dialogue that was, written by Amos Gatai that we then use as audition material, or stuff like, the Arab Giuliano like auditioning to be Warlord number 2 or Jihadi number 3.
Right.
Like those are the actual parts that were available, and that's I think the frustration that someone like Giuliano faced, which is why he started becoming an activist. And I think, was even though he was in a couple of big Hollywood movies, The Little Drummer Girl being one of them, there was a real limit to what was available to them. And I think that's what was interesting, is that we were being kind of transparent about that. So when they're fighting, is it Musa and Kareem? Is it Israeli Giuliano and Arab Giuliano? Like, who's doing the actual fighting? Where's the identity there? But that's all part of this like kind of exploration about identity, which is contradictory and multifaceted. So somehow it all, because it maybe came from the same place for all of us, it all was like it was harmonizing.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It worked together. Because I didn't know, because it was just very difficult sometimes to understand where are we? Are we in it, or are we outside of it? Are we in rehearsal? Are we, are they performing? Are they angry with each other? Are they not? And because they knew how to needle each other too.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
So they could fuck with each other.
And I think,
and some of it was
I love
real.
it.
And I think maybe for actors, there were probably some points where they weren't sure if they were acting or fighting.
They say they were.
Okay.
I mean, I've had the conversation with Kareem and Musa, and they were like, no, it was like we had a safety net. We weren't going completely. I don't know though. I don't believe it. There are times in the film where I'm like, wow, they really look like they're gonna punch each other.
Right.
Those are trailer moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The so the gathering of the actors for this, was it a regular audition process to have them audition to play
Parts of it
auditioning,
were.
or did you have?
No, well, we did. We auditioned. Well, it was all over Zoom because it was COVID.
Right.
And yeah, I recorded it, and I was like, record me having the Zoom, because I don't know, maybe that's going to be in the film. Like, we didn't know. I knew very early, like, okay, capture everything. So, but we did a very kind of conventional audition process, bringing people in. And initially, one of my instincts was, I want them to all look the same. I want you to be able to confuse them. I want there to be this, like, they're all bearded Middle Eastern men. I'm a bearded Middle Eastern man, right? So initially I thought, like, the director should also be a bearded Middle Eastern. I want everybody to be like, so that when they're on stage together, I wanted them to be the same height, grow the same beard, color it if we had to color it to make it the same. Because I wanted there to be this kind of confusion, because that's how stereotypes work. It's like, you people,
right.
you just amass people into this one identity, and, I just can't tell the difference. You all look the same. Like, it's racist and stereotypical and insulting all at the same time, but it's just what happens. So I wanted to kind of create that for the audience, so they would have a difficult time being like, which bearded man am I looking at right now?
Okay.
Right. So that they could try to find these anchors, like, oh, the anchors, he's wearing these, Arabic clothing, right? So I know that but then they take those things off and they're wearing suits, but it's like, okay, but he's the guy in white and he's the guy in black. But then they start switching. So it's like we're constantly challenging the audience's capacity to attach itself and to kind of suture into one person and say, like, oh, I know who that is, and it's like a shell game. Like, I'm watching the shell with the little ding on it because I know that's where it is, right? So it's like, how do you frustrate that for the audience without completely losing them? It's like, you have to hold them, you have to hold on to them just a little bit so they don't just give up on the film. And that part of the process for casting was like, okay, I'm looking for bearded Middle Easterners, but some of them were just god awful actors, right? So then eventually we went with the best actors. I think Sarah Salovitz knew Musa, who had been on a show. I don't remember what it was, but it was a pretty well-known show, and she knew him and then brought him in. And Musa knew Kareem and was like, well, let's talk to my friend Kareem, right? And so we got them, and then the third actor we cast, and then we cast an actress to play the director, and then we had a table read, which are filmed, of course.
Yeah,
right. We filmed
Absolutely.
the table read because I was like, I don't know, I still have all that footage. It's sitting on those drives over there, So, but the thing about the table read that was kind of unconventional is I didn't know which one of them was going to play the Israeli, the Arab, or the public. And we sat at the table for a full day on that stage, read the script 3 times, and each time one of them took a part, and then they switched, because I was like, okay, well, let's see how it works. And it became apparent very quickly that only Musa, who is Palestinian, could play the Palestinian Giuliano.
Okay.
Because he had this kind of humor about it,
sure,
that no one else would have had the right to bring that kind of levity to that role, right? Like, you can't speak about the misery in a funny way if you're not
right.
If it's not your experience. It doesn't feel right, So that we kind of locked that in, and then we locked in the parts. And here's what's really interesting. So, I had a couple weeks of pre-production where I could talk to the actors, and we'd work through some of the stuff in the parts. And the night before production, the actress who was supposed to play the director, who was Israeli, an Israeli actress, said, listen, man, you got to change some stuff in the script. I can't, I'm an actress in Israel, and I don't feel comfortable. I'm concerned about, I have concerns about, like, what consequences this might have for me. By the way, she wasn't wrong. I mean, think about the way the world has reacted, and what it might even mean that she was associated with a project like this in Israel. I mean, like, I don't blame her, but I said to her, I'm sorry, I can't change the script. I'm not changing it. I'm not changing, not just the script, but it's like the fundamentals of how we've constructed this process, and in terms of how it's going to represent this idea in this film. And I said, you have to go. Like, you can't. She said, well, I have to leave. I'm like, I agree. I'm not changing it. This is the night before.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I call Salome, who, again, when you're auditioning people, it's like you have like, okay, this is our top 3 and I can't decide who it's going to be, but let's try. We're going to go with this one. I call Salome, and I had like drinks with her the night before production. I said, are you ready? I'm like, can you do this? Because, you know, the part is yours. And she came in the first day not knowing anything. And she was really the only one who probably had to have some mastery of some of the dialogue, because she's the director and she's kind of driving it. And you know, so there were all these kind of things that happened along the way that either rerouted us or made us have to kind of rethink how we were going to do it. Adam's part was played by somebody else until Wednesday of the first week.
Oh, wow.
That actor also had to leave. Right. Wow. So Adam and Adam was an actor that was, again, of the 3 that we cast, he was like the 4th guy. And I was like, God, I don't even know how to. And I just said, and when we were in pre-production, Sarah and I were talking about how I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring Adam in as a consultant so that he can tell us, he's going to play a consultant. I'm going to tell the actors that he's a consultant.
Okay.
Right? He's going to help us kind of understand historically and politically what's happening in Israel, because he's an Israeli and we haven't cast him, but I want to find a way to use him. And I said that to him. And so he was going to be a consultant, but I was going to film it. So the character was also a consultant. You
right.
Sure. So it was like, he was going to come and consult for us, but he was going to be a character. It's like Larry David. You know, it's like they are who they are, but they are also playing a part. And he was supposed to come in on Wednesday, and our other actor didn't show.
Wow.
Didn't show. Like 2, 3, 4 hours late. And I was like, and Adam was coming in, you know, at 10 a.m. And so I was like, Adam, you're the guy. He's like, what do you mean I'm the guy? I'm like, it's your part. And like, he's like, now I got to figure out this part. I'm like, yeah, you got to figure out this part, you know? And so that was like the 3rd day of production, right? So it's like, it never wasn't shifting. Like, things were constantly moving, and, you know, we were always being presented with these kind of big questions about the project and which way it should or shouldn't go. So, you know, there were parts of it that we tried to do very conventionally, and then there were parts that we just had to throw out the playbook.
Okay.
And I think that was okay. I would kind of like to never not work like that. You know, like, I think that would be a great way to work, because filmmaking is all solving problems. Yes. It's like, what are the problems that are going to happen today that I have to solve? Writing is like that too. Like, what are the problems that I have to solve today? And that's it. And if you're not into solving problems, you shouldn't be doing it. And so if you find a way to say, like, I'm going to create an environment so that when problems happen, not only can we try to solve them, but we can use the process of solving the problems as part of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, I only want to make movies like that. Because then you're not trying to hide that there was a problem.
Right.
Pretend like there is a problem off screen, you know, but keep it off screen. It's like, well, why not just try to use it?
I think, too, it's very fortunate that it worked out that way, because I think of like Godfather 3, right? Winona Ryder was supposed to play the daughter, and then she got violently ill, and they had a 3-minute decision to make. So Sofia Coppola was thrown in the part, and of course the movie was lambasted because of her performance, because she wasn't an actress. She was just, you know, Dad.
She was Nepo baby.
Dad said, put that outfit on, stand there, and read.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Which, I mean, you know, sometimes that happens. But I think that some of the greatest successes in film are because of these like what you're talking about.
Solving problems.
Solving the problem. And it just so happened, though, you had the resources available to, you know, you had a great actor to take over this piece, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But what if there was nobody in the wings? What if it was like, oh, we can't do this? And then you're looking around, that fellow over there by the food table looks like he might be able to pull this off. You know, so let's give him a go.
It's so dialogue heavy, right?
Yeah.
That it's very hard to just throw somebody in with a bunch of lines. You know, even Adam, you know, because there's a moment in the process where we're like, okay, we have to move on from this first 30 pages so we can get to the next 50 pages, right? And there was a day where we were like, okay, this is the last day that we're doing this like final audition thing for each of you. um and even Adam was like, well, I feel like I'm finally getting it. Like I'm finally beginning to figure this out and we have to move on. And I was like, yeah, we got to move on, right? But there's something really raw, and the edges are rough and it's a little bit messy, but something real happened, and I'm as much a kind of student of this film as I am the person who made it, because I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that again?
Well, that
How do I
was
create the conditions for that?
Right.
yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to ask you, because as we're, watching this film, I'm like, gosh, this film has changed me in some way, right? So I can only imagine how making the film has changed you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's made me own the kind of contradictory nature of what it means to, you know, be Jewish, Israeli, love Israel, but have a lot of problems with it.
Right.
Right. At the same time, right. Be okay with saying, like, you know what? This is actually how I feel. I have friends who are Israeli and refuse to hear anything critical.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I have a problem with that. And I have friends who are Palestinian who say some pretty horrific things about what they wanted, what should be done to Israel, right? So, and I don't agree with them either. So I don't want to pretend that I belong in one camp or another anymore. I want to be like, no, this is actually how I feel, and contradiction is actually part of life, and it's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm satisfied with that experience, because I can look my kids in the eye and say, look, it's okay to feel like this.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
People will want you to take a side, but it's okay to say, like, no, I reject the whole concept. I mean, you want to tell me that in the history of the earth, which is billions of years old, the last couple thousand years, we're arguing about which group of ants on the fucking ass of an elephant, right, are the ones that are more right? Like, you want to tell me you're going to kill people over that? Like, I refuse to participate in that, with these ideas of nationalism that have been determined by, I don't know, states and
Well, but yeah.
all the nonsense of corporatist, political associations. Like, so you want to tell me that because somebody drew a line here that says that this person is, this nationality and this person is this nationality, that we're now going to fight and kill people over it? Like, I don't think I want to spend my split second here
Exactly.
Yeah.
on that shit.
Well, yeah.
Like, I'm not.
And we talked about it. We've done a lot. We did a lot of talking afterwards. I identified with this movie, the conflict, because personally, so I was an Orthodox priest for a couple decades.
Right.
I was born and raised Irish Catholic, which is a hard road to hoe, like
Of
all
course,
of them.
yeah.
But I immediately was like, something's wrong. Something's not right. The message I'm getting here and the actions I'm seeing here, they're not doing this. So I actually, my
Right.
whole journey wasn't so much a calling as I really wanted to understand. And the only way that I'm going to understand is to step over that line, not be the
Right.
guy in the pew, but the guy at the altar. And I did a lot of studying. I studied with the Franciscans, the Benedictines, and then finally studied as old traditional style, no seminary, nothing. It was 12
Right.
years of study, and then I finally became
Wow.
a priest. And the whole point was to keep pushing the envelope, pushing the envelope. I don't believe in this. I don't believe
Right.
in this. Why is this? Why is that? And I was lucky that I lived in Arizona at the time, and I got a call from a rabbi who wanted me to come speak at the synagogue, because they were kind of doing what a lot of people were trying to do. Is it's not just us. We walk out these doors and there's people of all colors and faiths and backgrounds and stuff, and we need to honor them for being part of what we are. And it was just very wonderful. But also at the same note, it increased my skepticism of the solidity of
Right.
what this
Right.
institution I'd stepped into. So,
Totally.
and so now I'm my own person, and I'm trying to teach my daughter it's okay to believe in something, but not at the exclusion of everything else. And
Yeah, it's the exclusion. It's
Yeah.
the I
yes,
don't, the chosenness above and to the exclusion of another human
right.
being. I mean, I have this conversation with my friends who are born again, Christians who are like, "Well, you're not saved," and it's like the part of the exclusion part is the thing that is I have a problem with that. We're all connecting to some higher, existence, understanding, consciousness.
Mhm.
I don't really give a crap how you get there, man. I don't care how you
That's
get there. It
That's
doesn't
it.
matter. It's like Internet Explorer, Safari, Firefox. I don't care how you get there. You're just going to the internet. Like, don't kill people over I'm an Internet Explorer person
Yes.
right.
and you're Google Chrome and we're the chosen people. So we're going to have to kill
And
you
that's
all.
the two things
Right?
that I
It's
think,
it's the story, like faith is the story we tell ourselves about, why
Yeah.
we're
right.
here.
But the whole thing about the film is the two problems with the Middle Eastern situation is politics and religion, because
Right.
formalized religion has to have A, B, C, D, E, and that's what we're sticking to. Um,
And it has to be an institution that can survive like a corporation,
yes,
right? It has to propagate and get new people in and
it's
own things and pay people. Like
It's a
it's like the
business.
difference between it's a business. It's very different than Jesus Christ, the kind of charismatic figure who has something about them. It's the institution that arises around them to sustain them that kind of eliminates that kind of magical
and
thing. And
I think we've stripped the
It
humanity out
does.
of a lot of things, and that's one thing about this. So I had some real emotion inside because I remember when that assassination took place. I
Mhm.
remember seeing it on the news, and I hadn't thought about it
Interesting.
since, right? Because there's always
Right.
a lot of stuff going on, but it's literally a world away,
Right.
and that's how we live. Is this is terrible, and I don't like this. However, I've got my thing going on right now, and
Totally.
I can't compare it's more important or less important. It's just it's happening to me right now, and I have to deal with it, kind of thing. And
Right.
and that's everybody, but we can get mired in that. And it just made me
Totally.
think, God, I wish I had been a slightly different person and could have grasped the notion of I'm going to take some time here to understand what this 30 seconds on the news was. This isn't just
Right.
another news piece. And so watching this whole film, I'm like, I really do wish I had been versed in Giuliano's life and more than just remembering, oh, yes, I do remember this because it did make the news here in America, you know. Um, but the whole thing with the institutions and politics and stuff, the one thing I got out of this film, it made me my mantra these days after watching this is I think I'd mentioned in the episode, politics isn't going to help. I'm not going to help because I don't live there. I'm no good to anybody. I
Right.
don't have
Right.
any ancestry. But when we talk about looking forward, like remembering for the future, it just made me think, you know what? I think if we kind of put everything aside, and my thing is, let's make it simple. Let's talk about the future, children. In this world, it'd be nice to get to a point where no child anywhere wakes up afraid of anything, afraid
Totally.
of the violence, afraid of not having food, afraid of,
Or just
yeah,
death.
or just
Yeah.
all this stuff. And I think, and it sounds super simplistic. I mean, it does. And, I mean, uh, but I believe as a species, we can get there. I just hope we don't have to keep like finding more dark points before the dawn kind of thing.
Well, I think I think if you, I mean, it seems, it's like we're really at the very beginning of whatever this
Yeah.
concept of humanity is. So we're just like barbaric
We're
ants.
just
It's like
babies.
that's what I'm saying. It's like I don't think we really understand, this thing about this is a line from something that Shimon Peres has said. I want to teach them about the history of the future,
Yes.
not the history of the past. Right? It raises a really interesting question about when terrible things happen or when terrible things are done to people, how do you move on? Like, how do you move forward? Because if all you're doing is holding on to the past, it becomes impossible to move forward. And therefore, one of the answers that we've come to is, okay, we've got to forget the past. That's not good either, because then you're denying things like,
Right.
North Atlantic slave trade. Like we can't just move on. Like as much as some, parties in the United States want to just say like, can we just pretend like it didn't happen?
Right.
Like move on. This happened in Canada, like with indigenous people. It's like, the prime minister apologized. We're good, right? Like we can go now, right?
Well, yeah, this has happened all over.
It's going to take, it's going to take more than that. So you don't want to be mired in the past, but you can't completely erase the past, because you want to be looking towards the future, but you can't do it without an understanding of what happened. But you can't be too mired in what happened, because then you can never come to it. It's like when you go into a different, politically, when you go into a country and you say like, okay, we're getting rid of the bad people. I mean, we can't get rid of all the bad people because every human being in the bureaucracy contributed something. So like, you go into Iran and Iraq and you can't get rid of all the Baathists. So they end up staying and they become part of the new institution. So it's like, it's very hard to just move on and, erase the past or get rid of the past. Realistically, it's much messier.
Yeah.
Right.
Life is messy.
It is.
Trauma is messy. History is messy. Like that's the messiness of this film, is like, it's just messy. And it's you can't just say programmatically, because you're a politician or an academic, well, this is how we do it in 3 steps. First, we get rid of the figurehead, and then we, it's like, it doesn't work.
Right.
Human beings are messy. We're organic, messy things.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to remember history. And I think the simple way, I would just put it as, we can't forget history. We never should, because that is the only guiding light that we have, is what not to do more than what to do. But you can let go of it. You can step out of it. Right.
Right. You can release it, not because everything is okay and I forgive you. You can release it because it's a choice, so that you can move on.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, my grandfather raised me he wanted me to have a hatred of the British. They're the whole reason that we're over here. Came over early 1900s. I'm, second generation and all this good stuff. And
that's funny.
But I never
it
could.
Seems so weird now to think
it really
of that,
does,
right?
Doesn't it? But
like, hate the British. Oh, the British.
And I get it, because my grandfather was born on the boat over here. My great grandfather fled because of murder, because he killed some tax collectors, because they took his eldest and they did what they call fox hunt, which they set him loose in the field and hunted him down. And horrible things happen.
You mean this is during the American Revolution?
Oh no, this was this
is after the American Revolution.
Yeah, this was
much after.
Yeah.
But you're still talking early 19th century, probably.
Yeah, because they came over here in 1917. So I think it was 1915 that happened. And I found all the paperwork through, the genealogy sites and stuff.
Isn't that crazy? Not that long ago.
He shipped his pregnant wife and 2 kids off to London so they could get a thing over and not be associated with him and anything. But anyway, it was really weird. And I'm like, I don't understand why. I don't even know these people. And first of all, I appreciate the horror of what happened, but it didn't happen to me. So I'm going to try and do better. And that's just kind of the whole thing. Totally. So it is weird. The British Empire is evil.
Yeah, because
1900s, man.
Because the British and the Americans are like, now in hindsight, it's like we're just standing right next to each other. Right. And we've done terrible things to other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the absurdity of looking at history in that way, where we hold on to these kind of identity cloaks that have become, these banners for who I am and who you're not. I have a real problem with that. And it's not because I don't believe that people deserve to be heard and seen and acknowledged and their diversity to be appreciated. But I do think that this we've held on to it to the point that we don't know how to communicate with each other anymore.
Right.
And and that to me is a problem. So I do think like I identity politics and politics of identity has we've gone awry, we've gone astray because of
Yes.
that. Like some that's led us astray somehow, and that's always in the interest of like we wanted to be able to acknowledge everybody and their diversity and their difference, but something about that has become like we've painted ourselves into many corners, and I don't know how to get out of it, but I think there's a messier answer
Yeah.
than everybody gets their
Sure.
identity and it's discreet, and you can't speak for me and you can't wear the things that my people wear because that's appropriation. Like all of that stuff to me is like, okay, I think we went too far. Like how do we get back to like the messiness of being a human?
Well, and yeah, I think like the appropriation, that was a huge hump for a little while where it was just like, that's all it was
Totally.
about. And I always thought, I think that's the most ridiculous thing in the world because no culture has anything that's original. We have all begged, borrowed, and stolen from everyone around us.
Right.
And sometimes isolationism, though, makes it seem like you're the only one doing this particular thing. But I thought that is the last thing you want to do. I think the better way to go is I see you wearing a kilt. I'm not Scottish, but there's nothing
Right.
about the Irish wardrobe that tracks. But if I were Scottish, be like, I see you're wearing a kilt. Did you know? And 20 seconds of what the kilt represents or what it is, what it is, what it is. Just to share that. Not, you can't wear that. You know, you're first of all, you're not even pasty white, so you shouldn't be wearing any of this stuff. I mean, that's just the horrible and wrong way to go about things. I can get very idealistic, but that's not what the show's
Totally.
about. You know, um, I the thing about this movie, I think, I told Danny when we were done, I'm like, why isn't this like everywhere? Why isn't this at every embassy? Why isn't this part of every government
Yeah.
course? Because you
Yeah.
put the complex questions of what's going on between these countries, what is the fix, and you made it very simple in this elegant film.
Well, very human.
Very human, that it's not, it's up to you to watch, as me as the viewer, it's up to the audience to view, to take it in, to be exposed to it and not be desensitized to it, but don't have fix-it syndrome. Right?
Yeah, I think that was the honest experience of everybody who was working on this film was like, you know, I don't have an answer. So let's make a film about I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of I'm going to pretend like I have an answer, let's just make a film that's about the fact that we don't know what the answer is, but there is a problem, and like maybe we could pull the problem apart and show you all the like nuance and complexity so that you understand that the answer is not so easy, because the people who have easy answers, they have to eliminate all of the different shades and colors in between into blacks and whites to have an answer.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it has to be in black and white, right? Because they have to reduce and take out all this information of nuance and complexity so that you can be a terrorist, or you can be a child murderer, or you can be a whatever name you want to call it. That requires eliminating a lot of understanding of history and the complexity and the nuance. And, you know, there are historical figures who are kind of cited and quoted in this film. And you know, this was Sarah Salovitz, the producer of this film, had this brilliant idea in the beginning to like, oh, what if we put a bunch of these kind of historical figures and what they have said at different times?
Yeah.
You know, Benjamin Netanyahu, Anwar Sadat, Golda Meir, you know, Mahmoud Abbas, and then let them, whenever they'd like, just take them and kind of put them in wherever they feel like it would work. And sometimes the people they are quoting will say things that you would never imagine that would have come from a Palestinian or an Arab leader, because it sounds like something, you know, a Jewish leader or an Israeli leader would say. And so it's like people are constantly historically flip-flopping their positions.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are progressive Israelis, like there are conservative Israelis, and there are progressive, you know, Palestinians. So their positions often fluctuate. And that's messy.
Yes, it is.
When you see it like that, it's very messy. It's like, you want to tell me that line was said by this person, right? And And I think that to have a very defined identity of who I am that's right and who you are that's wrong requires you to eliminate a lot of that contradiction and
Right.
messiness. Like it only exists because of that. So I'd rather just stew in the messiness. I think
Yeah.
now I've accepted that that's the condition of being human.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't know if I'm right but I know who I am.
Right. I am the person who does not know if they're
Right.
right. That's how I define
Yeah.
myself. The way that I define myself is as the person who's not quite sure, what the right answer is, but is trying to figure it out. And I tell my students that, like, if you're trying to write something, but you don't know what you think about this particular issue, why don't you write about not knowing what you think instead of trying to figure
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
a side
Well,
or a version.
and that's something we're trying to teach our daughter too is, you know what? I would rather be wrong and told
And get corrected.
and get corrected, but I'm only going to do that by speaking out. So I want to believe in myself enough that I don't necessarily need to have that black and white. I don't need to have that fine lined box. I don't need that safety.
It's comforting that it is safe. It's safe,
Yeah.
right? It makes us feel good that, like, okay, I know that I believe in this and I don't believe in that. That's why sports is so popular as entertainment in the
Right.
United States. Like, I hate the Lakers,
Yeah.
but I love the Knicks.
Yeah.
Like that's who I am, right? Or I'm a Celtics fan, and I'm like, oh God, the Knicks are terrible. So whatever that is, like, it gives you something. You feel you belong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a relatively harmless way to, be a part of a community.
Right. But like we're doing that on every
Yeah.
level. Like that way is harmless, but like politics is like, I'm a red hat, I'm a blue hat, like whatever. Stop talking. It's like enough already.
Yeah. The second you pick a side, it's over. Your insight and your growth, because you're not open to
Right.
anything. But yeah. But I do want to say one thing. So you mentioned about the black and white.
Yeah.
I love the fact that the film was in black and white. I grew up with it, growing up with mostly my grandparents. So all the old
Yeah.
films and stuff and everything.
Of course. Yeah.
But the thing and as a photographer, I loved shooting black and white, especially when
Yeah.
film still existed.
Yeah.
Because there's a truth to it. You can't rely on the coloring. You can't rely on some sort of, I'm going to do a scheme or something to help dress this up. You literally have stripped life down to the bare visual essentials. And I loved that because it made me see so much more of the actors, their expressions, how they did their performance. And I think that just helped drive it home. But the fact that you did the behind the scenes stuff in color, that was also wild. I loved that because I knew I'm on a different car on the train.
Yeah, something's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, okay, back to the dinner
and also,
car.
But by the way, we had another. I handed out even smaller cameras to the actors, and I was like, "Well, you guys take these into the green room, and why don't you guys shoot some stuff?"
Ooh.
And they were like, "Dude, we need a break. We don't want to shoot anymore. Like because we're on a revolving stage 6 hours a day with 4 cameras coming at us from different sides, or 5 or 6 cameras sometimes." And I go to Kareem was like, I go to sleep at night and all I see is like, I feel spinning and I see cameras. So they were like, no, we don't want that, whatever that time is. Cause I had this whole idea of like, oh wait, but what about the green room? We got to cover the green room, but we can't be in the green room because they don't want us in there. So what if they're shooting? So, that was a whole other level of register of trying to figure out, where there's just no. I think the idea here is that there isn't like a clear boundary between performance and identity, or reality,
Right.
Or between
or rehearsal
art
and performance,
and activism.
yeah. Like there's no, the best version. I mean, I some of this for me was I'm sitting at home during COVID and I'm reading about Giuliano and I'm like, wow. Look at all the shit this guy's doing. He's like doing real stuff in the world. He's like a real activist. And I'm sitting here with, these books and I've just got myself buried in these books. Right. And what am I doing? Like, how can I be an activist? Right. So the film, I'm kind of channeling him to find some version of activism that I'm capable of doing because I'm not him.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
You know, I'm not endangering my life in the way that he endangered his life every day and paid for it
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah.
Right? So I think some of that was me kind of struggling to figure out, like, what is the function of art in activism?
Facilitate
Like
a
how
conversation.
can it be? Yeah.
Yeah.
How can it be? How can it be activist
Yeah.
in a way that's
Well,
that changes the world, that does something in the world, as opposed to just represents the world?
Well, you did it. You put something out into the world that I feel like is art and activism.
I am
Yeah,
like
I'm happy about
directing
that.
as
Yeah.
many people as I can to this, and some I know are going to have
Please.
adverse reactions because they're of that group
Of
that
course,
they don't want to hear it.
which is fine. Like I want them talking about
Yes.
it. I just want to have a conversation again. Like a movie like this, you never make it expecting that like it's going to make buckets of money. Like it's a labor of love for everybody involved, right? Even the people who are being paid very little to be there. It's a labor
Yeah.
of love. So the real outcome that is desired for me is that it continues to have a life in the world and people continue to engage with it and talk about it. And you know, we did that on a festival. We had a little festival run, and we got a chance to see it in front of audiences and have conversations. We did it, by getting a distributor and finally getting it out there. It's hard to tell how many people are seeing it. You don't get a lot of feedback on that, but getting people to see it is difficult because it's a big ask. But once they see it, they connect with
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? They either have issues with it, or they are moved by it, or they're engaged with it intellectually. So it's like just getting people to sit down, which was a challenge in terms of festivals, because the first level screener that would get to see the film when we'd go in blind in a big festival, like they're gonna watch 10 minutes of this and be like, I don't know, pass. Like it's probably a pass, right? It's difficult, it's talky, like I don't get it, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I've spent time as a judge for film festivals, and I've seen incredible films, but I look at them and I think this is never going to see the light of day.
Sure.
Like it will never find a distributor, because we don't support that kind of engagement with cinema, at least very much anymore.
Well, and it comes down
Right.
to, so we talk a lot about, we started this podcast about B movies because we love B movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And
sure.
I always thought some of the best films ever are B movies, not the Oscar winners.
Some of the best directors have come out of B
Exactly.
movies,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, they cut
Yeah.
their teeth. Like James
And
Cameron doesn't exist
It's
without
not
it.
even like a step down. It's just the immediate next door neighbor to B movies is indie film. And
For sure.
the thing with indie film is, and a lot of people, so we have talked with a bunch of people. We've had our close calls with Hollywood where they're like, like our, the sci-fi series. This isn't what's going on right now. But that's the beauty of indie
Right.
film, is nobody cares what's going on right now. They care about,
Right.
this is the movie I want to make. And
Yeah. I mean, the people who are buying them do care about that.
They do.
I mean, when
Right.
you get the response, they're just like, well, there's too many words.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like we have
You know?
a couple of friends who did a trilogy. It was like over a 12 or 14-year period. It was a long time to get this little trilogy made. And they're like, one of them, we were talking about budgets and stuff. We mentioned $50,000, and one of them was like, I wouldn't know what to do with $50,000. I mean, if you gave me $50,000, I'd spend 5 of it like I usually do, and I don't know what the other 45 would be for.
I guess I'll give
Right.
you, 5 movies.
Yeah, and they're not looking to make the monster multi-million distribution deal.
Right.
I just want to
Right.
do this and get it out there, and I hope somebody laughs at it, because they were comedies.
Yeah.
So with Yes, Repeat, No, is there any plan for its future? I mean, is it going to be more festival runs? Is it like local house
No, I mean,
releases?
we had a good festival run. We went to about 12 or 13 festivals, and I think we won some prize at 4 or 5 of them. I mean, we won a lot of stuff, right? A lot of like best film, best director, screenplay, best editing, best acting. Like we like, that's what I'm saying, is when it can, like, once we got in the door, it connected with people. Then we were really lucky to get a distributor, because films like this do not get distributors. No Other Land, which was Academy Award winning film about the same idea, same region, never found distribution. Like people like are afraid to touch certain
Oh
films.
Yes.
yeah.
Festivals were afraid to touch us for a long time because they were like, well, what are you? Which side are you? Who are you? You know, like we got
Yeah.
rejected from his Jewish and Israeli and Arab film festivals equally. So it's like in a way, that's a point of pride for me because it means like we held the middle, right? We offended everybody,
There you go.
which is okay. So if we did it equally, okay, if it was balanced. To be honest with you, I would love for this to get some kind of release. This never got a release in Europe or in Israel. I would love for it to have a life there. I don't know in the world of independent filmmaking, as I'm sure you know, I'm exhausted. I kind of want to move on to the next
Yeah.
thing. I don't know how much time
Oh, sure.
or desire I have to continue pushing this project. But if it got somebody, got word of it and was like, we want to show it. I want to show it wherever. Like I'll show it to have a conversation. Like I'm interested in what people have to say about it and the experience that they have with it. That's what I'm in it. That's my thrill, right? I'm not looking to, nobody's paying people to make movies like this.
Right.
So it's fine. Like I've accepted that. I mean, I teach film at, at a college and I'm perfectly happy with that. So, but I'd like to make another film and, this film has hopefully opened those doors in terms of, seeing that, I know how to work with actors and that the actors like to work with me and that I can write material that's kind of, cause that's really how you get movies made is you got to get actors attached.
Yeah.
Because they get money. Because the money follows the actors and the actors follow the material. So in a way, I'm a bit exhausted by it. It's, I started living in it in 2021.
Sure.
That was the year that, I kind of started conceiving it. So it's 5 years and I want it to go out into the world, but I also want the bandwidth in my head to think of something else because I'm not the kind of person who, again, I haven't professionalized this process. I'm not prolific. I don't have 4 projects that I'm juggling and like I'm doing a little on this and a little on that and a little on this. Like I just try to find that one thing and then that's it. It has to obsess me. Right. So I want to get obsessed with something else. So I can't be obsessed with this anymore.
I mean, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have any
And that's
industry connections, but
Yeah.
we do constantly try to throw stuff out. Like I said, I'm putting this out to a
just
bunch
tell
of
the
people,
world.
Yeah.
and there's actually a few
Tell the
people. I'm
world.
making a short list of the folks that we do know who are like 2 elbows away from so and so and so and so. Because I think this is it's not often that you find a piece of art that could do something, and we don't generally discuss politics because
On our podcast.
yeah, well, even
Sure.
even just around the table because it's just such a disappointing
Yeah.
thing to go on about. But
Right.
no one can watch this and not have a brief discussion about it, at least. And I think that's important. But also, I think it's a perfect example of what you were saying earlier. How do you put something out there that has a message that isn't just a PSA, right? 90
Right.
minutes of blah 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 blah.
Yeah. What if your message is just, isn't it complicated to be human?
Yes.
Mhm.
Like that could be a message.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like, those are the films that appeal to me. The ones that kind of lean into the messiness of what it means to be complex and contradictory.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I'm like, yeah, that's what it feels like to me. I also like really awesome Hollywood movies. Like I'm not against it. I'm just saying that the ones that really, connect with me or floor me are the ones that they're just, they make you feel like somebody understands the experience that you're having. And that's ultimately what film, which came from drama and theater, that's what it's been about. It's about identification.
Yeah.
You identify with a character that has an experience that creates some kind of catharsis that allows you to return to your life as let's say, like a person who's less influenced by their passions because you've exercised them in the process of the catharsis,
Yes.
right? So you then return to society and you can be a better person. And so maybe that's the function of having that kind of experience is like you walk into encounters with other people with just a little more tenderness because you have an understanding of something that you may not have had before, or you can talk about the fact that it's really fucked up and complicated and that creates a connection. I'm not idealistic. I don't think that art can save the world. I don't believe that it's enough.
Art.
Right?
I don't believe art can save the world, but I'm one of those people that I think art is absolutely essential to everyone's brain. It opens doorways. It makes you perceive things differently than a matter of fact logical size. Like if you want to talk about
If
hemispheres,
done well.
yeah,
Yes.
if done well.
If done well, it can infect the world like a virus that does something.
Well, and it could make you
right, and it doesn't always have to be
right,
bad.
and
Right.
it can make you see the normal stuff you see every day slightly differently after seeing this one piece or seeing this painting
Right.
that made you feel something or evoke something. And I think it fundamentally changes us. And I think there's just been kind of a shortage
Yeah.
of it, honestly.
Totally.
You know, I mean, because movies are
because it's
money and
we've commercialized
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
It's just become about like how many people can you appeal to, and you don't do that by leaning into contradiction.
No, got to fill those seats.
Because most people are like, I don't need to feel that because I live that,
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like they don't want to deal.
They're like, I'm doing this to escape. I'm watching this movie to escape. I don't want to
Totally.
get dragged into. Yeah, I get that.
Which I understand, by the way.
Yeah.
I watch sports to escape. Like I don't want to think about politics, so I'm going to watch basketball.
That's why we watch bad
Like,
horror
right,
movies. It's like not even for the
Right.
show. That's just our jam. I don't have to think about it.
Right. Which is why it's good that you are you're talking about something that you are naturally excited to do. Yeah. Totally.
Question's going to be like what we always ask people is advice for anyone coming into this who's new, you know,
Sure.
filmmaking. And well, being a teacher of the arts,
I'm sure you have great advice.
probably have something in hand.
I mean, it's probably something I've learned on this, right? I mean, it's something because people have asked me this question, and I think that what I've come to is this realization that if you don't know what to say about a particular topic, like because you have to have like what's my idea about what's the story world, it's it's set in the future, it's post-apocalyptic, blah, blah, blah. If you don't have a clear idea of what that is, maybe consider writing about not having a clear idea
Right.
about what that is, right? Because that's at least an honest place. And I think a lot of people would argue, well, like that doesn't seem to really make sense. But to not know what you feel about an issue X in the world,
Right.
requires you to kind of destructure what that thing is into its component parts and kind of understand how does each part create this thing. And I think just in the process of doing that, like you're getting into something interesting. I don't know what that means in terms of like, how do I make it in the business? I don't know. Work really hard, have a trust fund, hopefully, or have a job that supports you that doesn't require you to make, money in any other way, because writing,
Right. Get a sugar daddy who can pay for your creative endeavors.
Like step one, get a sugar daddy. I don't know what to tell you. Like there's not a lot of money in it, and I wish there were, and there are fewer and fewer jobs, and
I always
AI is going to kill us all. Whatever the
I always bring up
that
Citizen Kane because I love the bit. The Inquirer lost $1 million. Well, that's good because that means we can lose $1 million for the next 20 years because that's how much money I've got. That's what you need to have in your back pocket.
I mean, or at least you need to understand that you may not make a living at it, but it may give you a good life. It may give you a satisfying life, even if it doesn't give you a living. But I do think one of the things that I wish film schools would teach and art schools is like, how do you make a living while you're trying to become that? Because the kind of fallacy of teaching people who are paying sometimes $60,000-$80,000 a year to go to these art schools or film schools that they're just going to go out there and make it is bullshit, because maybe 1 out of 20 of them are doing it 10 years later, right? And because you've set them up to believe that if they can't make it right away, then they must be failures. But if you look at artists historically who have made it at some point, man, it is sometimes decades and decades of work and failure and side jobs and this and that, and like, oh, I don't have enough money to fabricate the next thing, I guess I'll come back in 5 years and just keep working my job, and then finally they become these like museum hero artists. So
some of them
I
don't
think,
even
like,
make it until after they're dead.
Exactly. So the point is, do that stuff, but have a plan to structure your life in a way that allows you to survive. Because I think that's another big part of it,
Mhm.
so that you can do work that's honest
Yeah.
and not be kind of kowtowing to like the kind of system of commerce of like, well, what's hot right now?
Right.
I hear movies about blah 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 are really hot right now. Like, I don't know that. I don't know how to make work like that. Some people do. Some people are really good at it. I don't. But uh, those are the two pieces of advice I have: is like have a backup plan and have a structure to make. My daughter wants to be a performer. She wants to be an actress or a musician, and I'm like, okay, well, the question is, what are you going to do to support yourself? What's going to structure your life so you can keep doing that, so that you're not on the edge of desperation at all
Right.
times.
Yeah, the starving
Because
artist.
then you can have a great life, right? But it's okay if you're a starving artist, but you have a job, a side job as a whatever,
Right.
Anyway, that's what I have to say about that.
That's perfect.
I think that's great
I
advice.
love it. Wow.
Yeah, this has been an amazing conversation, and
Thank you, guys.
thank
I
you.
really appreciate being
Yeah,
here.
thank you so much for giving us so much of your time.
Yes. And I hope the
course.
channels are open,
love
because
talking
we
about
would
this.
love to hear whatever you've got coming up or whatever you get into.
I can't wait.
Yes.
Whenever that happens, I'm gonna say 2 to 3 years
Okay.
before another thing happens. But I'm working on it. I just don't know how it how that process
That's how it works.
materializes in a way that makes it faster than that. I've got a lot of books to read. I know that
Well,
about it.
B-siders, you have just sat through a wonderful interview with Michael Dahan, and it's testament to the fact of things can come out of nowhere, and embrace them. Someone reached out, bam, here we are. And Michael, you've been very generous. We really appreciate it. This has been wonderful.
Go watch
And-
Yes, Repeat, No.
Please
watch Yes,
and tell
Repeat,
me about
No.
it. Tell me what you think.
And we'll have links in the episode notes
Show
to
notes.
get to the different
Great.
things for rent and so on, and to see these things.
Excellent.
All right. Well,
Thank you both. I appreciate your
we
time.
appreciate
Thank
you,
Thanks
sir.
for being so detail oriented in your analysis. I was really impressed.
Well, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, B-siders, we're going to say goodbye to Michael.
We'll catch you next week.
Yep, this is Jim.
This is Danny.
Keep it up, folks.
Bye.